Hi, everybody that's watching. This video is going to be about my idea of a graphic novel got the idea from one of the graphic novels I read in my graphic narratives class called Watchmen, which is basically about a bunch of superheroes that aren't really superheroes, they're more of like humans playing superheroes. And I got the idea for the graphic novel idea that I'm talking about by that book because everybody in that book wanted to be so strong and so helpful and all this and that. But in reality, they were really helpless, especially the female character that was in there. And she was just so helpless, and it made me think women aren't that helpless. Like, we don't whine and complain and all that. Because she would go on and on about how there should be justice for everything, but she never really gets the work done herself. So I was thinking about like, well, there are some very influential women in history that have gotten the job done themselves and are very powerful and very feared. And so for my idea for the graphic novel, I was thinking about doing a graphic novel on like three important women in history. One being like a goddess, one being a hero or legendary figure, because they're basically the same. It's just kind of like a different category, but still they're well known and have heroic attributes. And then the third one is going to be just a woman from history, but is still like almost godlike. She's so feared and made such a big impact. So for the goddess, I was going to use Freya because I'm big into Norse mythology because I think it's super interesting, and I feel like everything in mythology is just very made up on the fly. Like a kid was asking why one day, so their parent just said, "Oh, and this and this," and the kid kept asking why, and they're like, "I'm running out of ideas." And then for the legendary or heroic figure, I was going to use Atalanta from Greek mythology because she was like the only real female hero. Because every other female hero was like Medea, who was also a villain at the same time, or a wife of someone like Penelope, Odysseus's wife. She was a hero because she stayed loyal to her husband, and I'm like, I feel like you got to be a little bit more to qualify for a hero. Um, and then the person in history, I was going to use Wu Zitan, who was the only female emperor in Chinese history, and she was just so feared and so renowned that they tried to like bury her away as like a horrible empress, and she did all these nasty, horrible things to her people when actually she did a lot of good, like making new trading paths so China could expand its prosperity, uh, made women a more power within her empire, which they could travel on their own, they could have their own jobs and stuff like that, which back in that age was unheard of. So basically, for that purpose in that graphic novel, I was gonna also like tie in a sort of method like Plato's Love and Sex, I think the name of the book is called, where it's basically a group of guys sit around a table eating and drinking and basically talking about ideas. And I was going to use that in the graphic novel that I had an idea for, where these three women basically come together and they tell their like biggest tales of their lives, like what they favored when they were actually in their prime, basically. Like maybe Wu Zitan would uh, go first and be like, well, unlike you guys, I was actually real. And she would basically be super sassy and all that because in politics, you have to be like kind of snide, kind of savvy kind of thing. And I feel like she was just kind of like, when she entered the room, everybody knew her presence, which I have always found admirable. And you don't really see that as much nowadays. It's more of people shouting to get everybody's attention. And she walked in and the crowd just fell silent. And so she would talk about how she came to power, and that was like her big influential moment where she basically she came into power by like marrying the next emperor in line because she was actually the former emperor's concubine, and so she married the next emperor as his wife, I believe, and she basically waited until he died, and she bore a son or two in the process. And to keep her power, she actually killed them off and sent them away, which was why she was so renowned as a horrible, horrible person, because in order to keep the power, she sacrificed her sons in the process, which is hard to even wrap your mind around, because you always hear mothers saying they have to protect their children and do everything they can to keep them alive, even if it means sacrificing themselves. But no, Wu Zitan basically sacrificed her children for her own expense, just to like be in power and say, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do, and I know these methods are harsh, but this is how it's got to be done. And then Atalanta and Freya will probably sit back in shock, but be like, you know what? I'm also very powerful and very talented, and I didn't even have to kill anybody to do that. And I think I'll have Freya go next, because she's also a super powerful goddess, because she is goddess of both the Vanir and Azir worlds. So basically, she started off in Vanir and then was sent as a hostage to Azir because there was a war of the gods. And to settle it, her and her brother went over as hostages so they could like have peace. And she basically was originally a goddess of like she was known as a playgirl goddess because she was a party girl. She was goddess of like being happy and like fertility and all these like flouncy girly things, and then gained her real stance and excuse me, as an Azir god by becoming a huge warrior, sending excuse me, sending warriors from the battlefield to Vanir and Asnir for basically what they did. And she was also goddess of the Valkyries, who also was like the Grim Reapers on the battlefield and sent souls to each world for their own heaven. And then she would tell that story. And then Atalanta would finish off by saying, I may not have done as impressive things as you guys in terms of like your own culture, but for me, I was the only female hero who did her own thing, because her father left her as a kid in the woods to die basically, because he wanted a son and not a daughter. And then she was raised by a she bear, and she learned how to hunt and basically the law of nature. And so she came back to her father in vengeance. And he's like, "Oh wait, don't kill me. I'll keep you as my daughter now, because you obviously are so well trained. You're an honor to the family. Blah blah blah." And she came back as like the greatest huntress, taking down a giant boar. And so everybody respected her and wanted her as a wife after that. And that was her basically coming of story. And they'll basically sit around the table telling each of their stories, and there's going to be drawings of them telling each of their stories and the way the stories are told and what's in their story and all that. And as their stories are told, there's going to be like drawings of the story, what's going on, all that good stuff. And by the end, they'll come to the conclusion that even though we had such different like places of coming from and culture and all that, we made an impact. And I think that was their goal to begin with. And I think they'll celebrate at the end, cheers, whatever they're drinking, and just say, yep, we did it. We made our impact. And that's going to be what I want for the graphic novel for this. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoy your day and hope everything goes well for you.